Hello and welcome to my level of investment tier list. So, what is level of investment? It is how much of your time, your resources, your money, your weapons, and so on, your stat boosters go into a unit before you see a return on that unit, a return on your investment. So, if I dump stat boosters into Vander, is he going to be good? And if so, how much money does it take? How many upgrades does it take? How much like focused attention and leveling and feeding of XP does it take before he is a good unit or a great unit or a carry? So the investment itself doesn't translate to the results. So for example, if I put clan in high investment, this doesn't mean that if you invest a ton in him, he's going to be like a great unit. It might mean that he's okay. And I'll evaluate each unit based on how they will be, at least as far as I understand, in the maddening run. This is without DLC, so factor that in. The DLC does fundamentally change the game. I'm just addressing that early. So if you run DLC on maddening, just understand that you have access to different tools that drastically shape the way the game is played, because you have access to different emblem rings that do different things. So, for example, if you throw Tiki on a unit with bad growths, it largely fixes their bad growth. So that's an example. All right. So, Alir. Does Alir require high investment to become good, medium, low, no, or should you avoid using them? I would say Alir is low investment. Alir still wants you to set up some XP, like set up some kills in the early chapters. So, like in chapter 1 through like 3, you generally want to avoid using Vander. And there are key things to do to set up, optimal XP gain from killing enemies and feeding Alir. So Alir gets some feeding. I would say Alir is usually a target for stat boosters, but it's not like they need them. It's just nice to use them on them. And they definitely get forged weapons and engraved weapons, usually before anyone else, or as early as humanly possible, because they're a force deploy and they're a good unit. But I would say overall, the level of investment isn't like super high. Like you don't have to do too much to make Alir good, which is good because it's your main unit. So, all right. So avoid using, I would say, Vander. He has a high internal level, bad stat growth, like his actual growths are bad, and his base stats are bad. So he's kind of like the perfect storm of don't use it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use him to body block early game or to put chip damage on something to set up kills. That is how you should use him. But if he gets a kill, that XP has just been burned. Like he gets like 1 point of experience per kill early game. And even later game, he still has a high internal level and levels up slow. So you really can't use him late game very well, if at all. So you should basically just avoid using him. All right. Clan, I would say, is high investment. And even so, he'll just become like a viable unit, but barely. You need to second seal him into physical. And if you keep him on mage, he just has bad magic growth. And the only redeeming thing about him is his speed. But he tends to be frail under fire. And if he gets focused by a single enemy, he will die in usually 1 round of combat, guaranteed. So that being said, he's almost in borderline avoid using, but he's still at least somewhat viable. Fram, I would say, is medium investment. She heals, which levels herself up. And as she levels herself up, you can just pop a Master Seal on her and turn her into a High Priest, which is decent, a Martial Master, which is okay, or you can second seal her to something like Sage, and she does fine on that because she actually does have decent speed growth and okay magic growth. It's not like hard carry, so at best, she'll just become like a decent unit. But that being said, I would say it requires a medium level of investment in terms of like money, in terms of potential stat boosters, and just general attention. Alfred, I would say, is high investment. Now, you might be thinking, well, you just use him and stab things. What's the investment? He needs a good forged weapon to be relevant, and he also needs Sigurd. It's like he really suffers when you take Sigurd off of him. You immediately see how weak he is when you pull Sigurd off of him, and he doesn't have momentum from Sigurd. It's almost painful. He feels really weak, and his speed is just really bad. He has low build, and his speed is really low. So he usually gets doubled. He starts getting doubled by enemies, I think by like chapter 5. Enemies start to double him, And I think he actually has decent speed growth, but it's just that his base speed is low and his personal class just isn't very good for maddening. It has a random chance to reduce damage by half, which sounds good on paper, but randomness and mitigation, like there was a meme skill in Three Houses, Miracle, where your unit had a percent chance to not die if they were killed, and the percent was equal to their luck. So if you had 30 luck, you had a 30% chance to not die. But you can't count on that. Like, you don't know when that's going to happen. So, like, on average, it might prevent death. But if you're dying so much that you need that, you're just playing poorly. So it's kind of like that with him, where it's not good enough to justify running, and he requires a lot, and he also has accuracy issues. I completely invested in him on my third maddening run, and by chapter 13, he had like 70% hit rate with a forged engraved weapon, and he just was struggling, and it was not fun, and he fell off hard. It was just not fun. All right. Boucheron, also high level investment. He starts out low level with low SP. His bases are okay to some degree. His stat increases are okay to some degree. His main problem is that the game hands you better units, and in order to get him to not even be better than these units, but just like slightly worse than them, you have to really level him up a lot. And it's difficult to set up kills for him because he uses axes. And early game, you don't have access to engravings that increase accuracy. So you're just stuck with like 60 to 70% hit rates. So he's wildly inconsistent. And he also has low speed because of the weight of the axes and his base speed. So he doesn't double, he's inaccurate, and he's hard to train. There's just no reason to use him. And this is also, I got him to level 9 by chapter 13 by deploying him every single mission and having him attack and kill as many targets as he could. And he's only level 9 by chapter 13. That's really bad. They hand you Tamara at level 18 in chapter 13. He is half her level, and her stats are like blowing his out of the water. So it's like I spent all this investment in leveling him up, and I didn't even get a good unit. Like you would have to struggle to make him viable. He's borderline avoid using. Eddie, I would say, is high investment. She has really low speed, really low defense, really low res, and like kind of medium low health. So what does that mean? It means anytime she gets attacked, she dies. Anytime. Any enemy that attacks her, the weakest, like low strength enemy will double her and kill her. Like enemies that wouldn't kill a fly will kill her. She is the most susceptible like unit to death. She has the worst defensive stats, I think, in the game. And she also has very low speed. She is a pure liability. Honestly, if she couldn't shoot down flyers, I'd put her in avoid using. And like her being on bows is only really relevant to early game. But on maddening, no DLC, she just dies to everything. And I can play around that, and I'm good enough with positioning where I can get her out of danger. But just the fact that, like, let's say I have a good position, and if just all of my units can tank a hit, I can be hyper aggressive and kill more enemies. But now I can't do that because I have this unit who will get one rounded by that one enemy. So she's like the weak link. She's like the thing that she's like a nightmare anchor where she like drags your team down. Where she's like, I'm a liability, I can't get hit. And it's like, I could be really aggressive right here, but now I can't because that stupid Pegasus Knight that deals 10 damage somehow one rounds Eddie. And yeah, I honestly, so many people like her. I'm just kidding. All right, she can still shoot things down, but these guys, I tried on my third maddening run. I dove hard into investing in these, and it did not pay off at all. Saline, low investment. She's a good unit. She's like an A tier. There's some argument that people might make that she belongs in S, but her magic growth is only 40% on her best class. Well, on her unique class. I don't know if that's her best class. She might be better off on Sage. I don't know. It needs tested. But she is decent, and it doesn't require much for her to be good. You just hand her some weapons and use her. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Louis, I would say, is medium. If you want him early game, he's great. Early game, no problems. Just keep him away from mages and he's fine. Late game, middle game, he's got some issues. Dudes start hitting like 40 to 50 damage a hit with high speed. Like enemy axe users, one round him when he's at like 30 defense, it's crazy. His defense does not scale well into the middle game. And into the end game where things have like sometimes 70 damage, it's like, oh my goodness. Like, how do you tank that? Like, there are enemies with like steel great axe and stuff that hit, or I'm sorry, silver great axe that will hit like a 70. Like, how do you tank a 70? That's crazy. Like, you need some like bond shield or some chain guard or some, you need some mechanical thing, not like some dude that just has a high defensive stat. And feeding him kills is difficult. His accuracy isn't there. He can't dive. The best use case for him is like tanking enemy physical, but even so, he doesn't scale very well into the mid game. And units like Chimera outshine him because she has slightly lower defense but way higher speed, so she effectively has more health because she doesn't get doubled by anything. So his low speed on tanks just makes them bad. But that being said, there are builds for him that are still relevant. You can throw him on Halberdier; he'll be good. He won't be a hard carry; he'll just be good. Um, yeah. So okay, Chloe, I would say is low investment. I run her on 3 out of 4 of my maddening runs every single time. You just hand her a forged weapon and she just pops off. She has high speed. She doubles everything. She tends to have high dodge because of her high speed. She doubles things immediately. She also has good dex, so she's accurate. She's basically everything Alfred wishes he could be, but more because she also flies. And she has an insanely good passive that just gives her +2 damage. That has very easy condition to meet. You could run her with literally anything and she'll be fine. Like in terms of other teammates, she's useful in every single situation. It's like the archers thing. Some people get like tripped up by archers. If you want to be hyper aggressive in this game, I would say flying units are the go-to thing, and you just have to get used to positioning them in relation to archers. And the way you do it is you sit just outside of the archer's max range, and then on the next turn you dive the archer and kill it. And this works on so many Fire Emblem games, it's ridiculous. You are the archer's counter. They don't counter you. They deal scale damage to you, sure, but you one round them and they can't hit you back. You are their counter. You have to think about this like in terms of being, a predator. You're the apex predator, and they are the prey. You're like a hawk or some kind of falcon, and you have to hop down on that. All right, I'm getting a little silly here. All right, Diamant. I would say he's medium. So what does that mean? So why is he medium? He's basically a Lear. So what do I mean? So he's a 4-move sword unit. He is a Lear. He starts out as a Lear, but you know who's better as a Lear than Diamant? It's a Lear. And a Lear has better stats than him. So he has viable builds. He even potentially has maybe even S tier builds with certain things, based on what some people have been telling me. Like the thing with the DLC, like, someone was saying throw Hector on him. It seems to be the case that Hector just makes any unit insane. So it's really just Hector being overpowered, but also the DLC, I think, needs balanced, for being honest. Like, it shouldn't be the case that a DLC ring just enables anything to double. That's broken as hell. But that being said, without DLC, I'd say he's just like decent. You can run him if you want to. He's not a bad unit. He pulls his own weight, and he has decent stats. He has some good durability. I like his passive. He has a lot going for him. I'd say he's like a solid A tier at minimum. But he does require some resources to get him going. He's going to want like a forged weapon. He's going to want to be second sealed, I would say. I don't like his base class. I would put him on something else. And it seems that most of the comments of people asserting Diamant is really strong basically want him on something that isn't his base class, like his successor class. So that seems to be the case. So that's medium investment. If you have to second seal, you're automatic medium. I think that's fair. Because that's more than just like master seal, here's some weapons, get going. Yeah. All right. Amber. He's probably medium. So he's kind of like, he's okay. He's kind of like weaker. He's not like that good. His speed is kind of low, so he's going to have a lot of problems. So like units that have bad speed suffer immediately. Like it's not like their bad speed becomes a problem. It's like it's always a problem. Because on maddening mode, when things double you, they tend to kill you, and even if they don't, they'll almost kill you. So like when you get doubled, unless you have like insane defensive stat and you're tanking something correctly, like if you're on like a Pegasus Knight and you're getting hit by a mage and it does like, no damage to you, you're fine. But when things hit you and they hit you well and they double you, they tend to either kill you, almost kill you, or put you below 50%, which is basically almost killing you. So it's very rare that units can tank hits. So when units have low speed, they get doubled. And when units get doubled, it puts you in a position where you have a liability. And you have a unit who, if they just avoided getting doubled, would be at higher health and could kill something and survive. That's the key, right? Because when you double yourself, like if you double an enemy, if I can take a hit and then kill, that's amazing. But if I can't take a hit and then kill, that's trash. Like, that's not good. That's bad. Not killing is bad. Being at low health is bad. Like, starting a fight at low health, like let's say he's in an aggressive position attacking something and he's like almost dead. He's going to need to catch a heal now. That means another unit has to waste its turn healing him. And obviously some units should be healing and doing stuff, but just the fact that he has low speed puts him at disadvantage, and I think he would need more investment in terms of like attention and leveling and stat boosters and stuff just to get him up to be relevant. He might even be potentially high investment. Jade, I would say, is medium, similar to Louis. Basically the exact same thing I said about Louis. She just has slightly better res. Alchrist, I would say, is low. He's really good on his base class. You don't have to do anything to him. He has way better bases than Eddie, better speed, better defense, better res, higher health. His passive is really good with brave weapons, and you can basically get its rate to trigger at around 80 to 90% depending on his dex. He also has 70% dex growth, and his passive works off of dex. So dude literally needs almost nothing. You just hand him some weapons, upgrade him once, and he's good to go. Lapis is high investment. I've used her twice, and every time she's bad. You'll hear other horror stories of running Lapis. Everyone likes her because she looks cool. Let's be honest. She looks cool, and you like her, so you want to use her. But then she's terrible, and then you feel sad. That's Lapis. She's good on Halberdier, but it's still high level of investment because you have to reclass her. So, and also, even on Halberdier, Halberdier is a high setup thing. Like, you need to have a dude on the other side to double. Her strength is low. Her speed is decent, but her strength is low. So I'm not even so sure she's even good on Halberdier. Because Halberdier just wants strength, and it doesn't care about speed. It just wants to double stuff with the pincer attack. So her low strength actually makes her kind of a bad Halberdier, because you just want to take a unit who's never going to have good strength like these. Or, I'm sorry, good speed. Like units with good strength, even him, and to some degree him, and just hand them Halberdier and just let him go double. But she has low health, kind of frail, requires a lot of attention, requires overinvestment, and the game hands you better units, so it's tough. Definitely high investment unit. Citrine, I'm going to put at medium. So she has low speed, which is inherently bad, and the only way to make her viable, as far as I can tell, is to RNG abuse the game and bond ring creation to create a specific ring that allows her to double with lightning, and that seems to be the go-to build of the community based on the comments I've been getting. I mean, this is fine. This is still viable, but spending like 20 to 30 minutes reloading saves until you get the right emblem ring or the right bond ring is definitely a high level of investment. Like, there's no way. I wouldn't personally do that. The most I've done is on my second maddening run. I did like 10 minutes of bond ring manipulation, and then I got bored, and then I've never done it since. And I will never do it again in the future because it's just, I hate getting stuck in menus and I hate reloading saves. So like, I'm just never going to do it again. It's not worth it. Like, it barely helps you, even if it helps you at all. And I don't think it's worth it. Tamara, I would say she's medium, but she's an S tier when you invest in her. She's medium in that you pump her with dex books, and that's definitely not low investment. Like, saving all your dex books for her, and maybe you use a speed wing on her to keep her speed higher than enemies to double them. When you don't use a speed wing on her, she might be a little bit below their speed, but alternatively, you can run speed taker on her, and that would fix her speed. So, but getting speed taker is medium investment. Like, that's 2k SP. That's not a trivial skill to get. But when you invest in her, she pops off. She has high defense, high speed, good damage output with sandstorm triggers. She is an S tier unit when you invest in her. But it is definitely a medium investment. It's not low, it's not high. It's a few stat boosters. That's it, I would say. That's all it took for me to put her into a position where she was just one-rounding tons of things. Marin, I would say, is low. You can reclass her if you want to. You don't even have to do anything, and she's like a solid A tier unit. Just have her be on a wolf and throw daggers. And then if you want to reclass her into Wyvern, she's actually really good on Wyvern, which would put her into medium investment. But You can just run her on her default class and she's fine. Panetta, I would say, is medium. From the sound of it, you have to go out of your way to set up a crit build and manage her being at low health if you want her to be on a good crit build. She also kind of falls off unless you overinvest in her to some degree, but she's like a solid A tier with investment. But it's definitely not easy or effortless. Like, you have to go out of your way to get her specific things so that she's good. Whereas some of these units, you just hand them the weapon they're going to be using and then they just kill stuff. And I would say that's where she's at. Fagato, I would say, is low investment, but personally, I found his damage to fall off hardcore as you enter the end game. His stats are great and he's great, and then once you hit the end game, like the final 6 chapters, he feels like he's shooting Nerf darts. Like, he just starts hitting no damage and falling off hardcore. A few other people pointed this out in Maddening, but you don't have to do anything to him. He's basically like a Bow Knight type class, and he's fine. Was it Pandreo? I don't use this dude, but you don't have to do anything and he's good. You can just run him and he's fine. So, and from what I understand, he's like A tier, maybe S tier. I need to run him more, but yeah, he seems good, seems low investment, doesn't seem like you have to do much to him. Bune, I'd say, is probably medium or high. I'll just put him in medium. I don't think his result is very good. Like, if you mess around with his class, I think ultimately he'll be like a B tier because of his bases and his class. So let's look at his growth rates really quick just to rule out if he has potential. 35% speed, 30% strength, 40% dex. He's kind of average across the board, but his speed isn't going to get high enough that he's going to start snowballing. So he's never going to be doubling things, and his strength isn't high enough that he's going to start snowballing. So he's kind of just you can invest in him if you really like him, but he's kind of like a B tier overall, after you invest in him. Sadal, I would say you don't have to do anything. You don't need to upgrade him. You just use him and he's good. You literally do 0 for him and he just is immediately good. He levels up on his own and then he starts healing your dudes for free. He comes with so much SP, you can get cancer, I think, immediately. You can just buy the bond with Sigurd and then just get cancer immediately. And then you can eventually build up another 500 or 1k SP to get him quality time so that he has 2 AoE heals, one on wait and one on turn start. And then he just boosts your dude's stats and refreshes. You don't have to do anything. He's good. You have to do literally nothing for him. And he's just amazing all the time. All right. Ivy, I would say, is low. So she's low if you just keep Lyn on her. Now, arguably, Lyn on anyone is good, but Lyn on her with the bonded shield strat is really strong. Now, you could just get her speed taker, and that's similar, because I think you get her and she has 1k or 1.2k SP. So saving up another 600, 800 SP, whatever, to get her to speed taker really isn't that unreasonable. So once you get her speed taker, that solves her speed problem. And then if you get her on something that increases her speed as well, she just needs speed and then she's good to go. She also has some minor accuracy problems, but her passive kind of helps mitigate that. But if you're using her as an enemy phase flying tank with flyer squad bond shield strat, she's very good at this. And I would say she's low investment. If you just leave Lyn on her and just use her with Lucina bond shield flyer squad, she's insane. If you use her in another way, I would say she's probably medium. So it really depends on the use case. Zelkov, I don't think you need to do anything. You just give the dude a dagger. You don't even have to upgrade him. You don't even have to use a Master Seal. He's just a thief. He's just a thief. He has great stats. He's good to go. He's just great. He's just insane. Yeah, there's nothing else to say. Kagetsu, I would say, is low, just to switch him off of Swordmaster if you want to. You can keep him on it, and he's fine. He has great stats. Dude is just really good. Probably way less investment than Ivy, because he doesn't have to have Lyn specifically to be good. He's just always useful. He's just a really crazy stat unit. Hortensia, I would say, is low. You just run her. She becomes a healer. She's a healer. She becomes a utility staff user. You keep her on her class, so you just reclass. You Master Seal her, and then she's decent. She does medium damage, but she does have really good speed. So she has really good speed, and the tomes she has access to tend to be lighter. I am curious as to how good she is on Sage, because I have a feeling she'd be a killer Sage. to like fix her magic growth. So like her growth rates. So Hortensia, let's see. Her growth rate on magic is 20%. Her speed is 50. So on Sage, she would be 50% magic growth. This would help fix her damage. The thing about her is she's very fast, but she doesn't hit very hard. And she tends to have low max health. So I usually run like health plus 7 and health plus 10 on her. Like I eventually upgrade it and then canter. And then I just have her heal and deal like chip damage to like last hit or set up kills. But she's still really good despite that. And she's a pretty fast flying unit. So that's pretty useful. Rosado, I would say is medium. I think you want to reclass him. I did use him on Wyvern, and I feel like his speed is too low, and he's like on axes. He can also use spears, so maybe he's just better on spears, but I felt like he was kind of underwhelming on Wyvern. And this was me using him an entire maddening run from as soon as I got him until the end game. So I would say he needs a little bit more work, a little bit more unit planning to be good, but definitely medium. Next we have Goldmary. I would say she's medium. Most people say you reclass her off of hero, and that's the definition of medium investment. I personally I ran her on hero for an entire playthrough, and she didn't really do well. So I don't know how good she is. Anna, I would say, is medium, but with the investment, she's like S tier. So because she snowballs your economy and she has 80% magic growth, so she deals a ton of damage and she also has 50% speed growth. It does require a little bit more than some of these other units to get her going, but once she gets going, it's worth it. And she just generates money and kills things. There's really nothing else to say. Yunaka, I would say, is low investment. I mean, maybe even no investment. Well, no, because like Zelkov, he just comes in at high bases. You don't have to do anything. He's just good immediately. She is good immediately, but you have to use her. You have to level her up. You have to second seal her. You have to eventually second seal her when she hits cap. But you have to upgrade some weapons because she starts off with iron daggers, which are quite weak. So low investment is still like you don't really have to do much, which is the case with her. She's just like kind of effortlessly good, and these are effortlessly like insane. So that's like the difference. But most of these are kind of like A to S tier, I would say, and then some of these end up being like I think these two are medium investment S tiers. I think people get tripped up on like this investment thing where they're like, oh well, because Anna is medium investment, she's on S tier. It's like, no, you can be S tier and require some startup. Like you could make some successful business that costs $1 million, or you could have some business handed to you that generates $50,000 a year. And that's the difference between the two. All right. And then we have Veil. I would say probably low. You can just use her on her base class and she's fine. You could reclass her if you want to, but her base class is fine. It's not like S tier. I would say it's like high A, if anything. It's just decent. She is frail under fire, though, so she's kind of like a glass cannon. But she's not very fast, so she doesn't double. So she's kind of like bad Anna. that might get some people upset, but I'm not saying it to upset you. I'm just saying it because I think it's true. Anna has better magic growth, and she has like more opportunity to build speed levels. So Veil's stats, she's 30% speed. All right, and then what's her Fell Child? Let's see. Her Fell Child is 5% speed growth. So her speed growth is much worse than Anna's. And her magic growth, 25% from Fell Child plus her base of 45. So her magic growth is 70%. So she has good magic growth, but way lower speed and also no build. Anna has build, 5% build. But Veil, it wouldn't matter because like by the time you get her, even if she had 10% build, she would have to level up 10 times on fixed mode to see a single point increase. So the fact that she doesn't have build isn't really super relevant. But Anna will snowball beyond her in terms of speed and raw magic stat by the time you get Veil. So I've actually had the opportunity to compare them, like in terms of damage and speed, because I've had both at the same time, and Anna just smokes her. So, but yeah, Anna definitely is medium investment. But so here is the chart. It's kind of obvious that these are low investment, and then some of these you have to do some stat boosters, you have to do some exploit to get an item. You have to do some stat boosting or changing classes. Some of these are just in here for like second sealing. Like if you have to second seal or you have to pay attention to the unit, I'd say it's automatically a medium investment. If you have to really go out of your way to feed it a ton of kills for it to even be relevant, it's high investment. And then if it's just cursed, it's a void. So yeah, I think this is reasonable. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. I think if I wanted to change anyone, just like looking over it again, I might move Ivy into medium. I think that's fair because Hortensia doesn't need anything and she's just useful. Ivy needs some kind of speed thing, so that kind of puts her in medium. Now, if you just leave her alone and leave Lynn on her, that she's low investment. But if you want to actually use Lynn on someone else, then all of a sudden Ivy needs some more attention to make her more relevant and more viable. So in that way, like without the Lynn emblem ring, she's kind of medium. And even then, between Anna and Ivy, Anna has better dex and more speed. So she needs, funny enough, once Anna gets going, she needs less work than Ivy, who needs more problem solving, like more troubleshooting before she like turns back online. But yeah, I think this is mostly accurate. Definitely let me know if you agree or disagree and why. I mean, if you make a good argument, I would agree. You know what I mean? So like that's my thing. If you can make a strong argument, if you can make a compelling argument that makes sense, it's logical, or just like some mathematical argument where the math checks out, you can convince me, and I'll change my opinion. And yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this useful. You can kind of use this as a reference point for which units need more work than others before they get online. And some of these are starting units. So like some of these starting units don't require much and they just start popping off. She's also a starting unit. So these aren't like, this isn't less investment than this. This is like all around the same. But these starting units don't require much to get them going. They just need a weapon, and that's it. Like a weapon with some like a 1 or 2 points of upgrade, right? Like +1 or +2 on like Iron Dagger or Steel Lance +1 with an engraving, Steel Sword +1 with an engraving, and they start popping off. Levin Sword with an engraving, Brave Bow, Silver Bow, Steel Bow, like just basic weaponry. Not much. And then these guys, they need some more work. And some of these are S tiers, some of these are A tiers, some of these are B tiers. These guys, I would say all of these are B or below, like C and B tiers, maybe even D in some cases. And this is having tried them multiple times, like dumping tons of kills into them, in some cases using stat boosters, and they just don't pop off. And the game just hands you things that are crazy all the time. Like it's just like, here's this guy, here's this guy. Here's this guy. Here's some crazy units. Here's Etier, but better. Like in every sense of in every way, he's better. Stat wise. Maybe she has higher strength, but yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for checking this out. Peace.